Welcome to Cities on the Move. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. The town of Minnesota Lake has as strong a sense of community as I have ever seen. The sheer number and effort their residents put into a variety of projects is impressive. Today we meet Chris Voles, who shares her love for the butterfly garden, which has a long history in town. We stop into the Kramer House, a beautiful Queen Anne that was restored and now serves as the town library and museum. We also visit with Sharon Grunsky and Phil Nasby to learn more about the Prairie restoration around the old Mill Pond shoreline. We'll have all this and more. Stay tuned for Cities on the Move. Chris Voles learned to love gardening from her in-laws. She is now part of a dedicated team that maintains a beautiful butterfly garden in town. Let's meet her now.
My name is Chris Voles, and I have been a resident of Minnesota Lake since I was in 6th grade, so I've been here a long, long time. My husband and I farmed outside of Minnesota Lake, and I taught school. And then went on to become a principal and worked in various schools, and then when I retired, we came back to Minnesota Lake. This garden was put into, the best information I've got, it was in the early 70s. And it was actually put in by my husband's aunt and uncle. They left their farm and moved into Minnesota Lake. And Gladys was a wonderful gardener and didn't have a lot of room around her house, and so she started a garden down here. And then it was finally turned over to Donna Salick, and she took it on as her love and passion. And I have no idea how many years she took care of it, but she was down here every morning weeding, every morning watering. Didn't make any difference about mosquitoes and heat and all that stuff. This was her thing to do. As her health began to wane, she realized there weren't going to be people to take over like she had. And so she came to me and to Kathy Reed, another resident here in Minnesota Lake, and talked to us about getting a garden club started. Maybe we should get a garden club started with the focus of taking care of the gardens down here, but also learning and having some fun. We're actually called the Minnesota Lake Area Garden Club, but we kind of refer to ourselves as the late bloomers because I think our average age is probably 70. It was originally a butterfly garden. That was the reason they started it, was to get the butterflies attracted down to this area. They knew they were here, but there was no place for them to eat and to nurture, and so that was the intent, is that this would be a butterfly garden. These yellow black-eyed Susans are specifically to bring in butterflies. They bloom midsummer to the end, and so they're very attractive to butterflies. We also have lots of coneflowers in the gardens, and the butterflies love the coneflowers. And then we have a rose garden, and that was developed by the garden club, and it was in memory of Donna, who did all of the work down here. And the butterflies and the hummingbirds specifically come into the roses. And mostly down here we see monarch butterflies. That's the biggest numbers that we see. But on any given day you can see many, many different species of butterflies or different kinds. Well, my mother-in-law loved to garden. She was a wonderful gardener. And my sister-in-law, Jenny, and my sister-in-law, Agnes, all gardened, and they all had this wonderful joy about the garden. So when I retired, I thought, you know, I don't really know much about gardening, and I want to learn it because I see all that comes to them through their gardening. And I now get that feeling too. When you're out in the garden, you're close to nature, you're close, for me, it's being close to God. So I just really find it a peaceful, enjoyable place to be.
Well, today we're talking with a couple of special guests from Minnesota Lake, and we're talking about Shoreline Prairie restoration, and it sounds like a really great project. And our guests today are Sharon Grunsky from the City of Minnesota Lake and Phil Nasby from the DNR. Thank you both for being here.
Well, thanks for inviting.
Yes. All right. Sharon, you kind of instigated this concept. Give us a little background. Tell us a little bit about what prompted this idea to come up for you.
It was actually, well, kind of brought to my attention from an urban specialist who was working for the county, who was, she got her job through a grant through Minnesota on stormwater runoff. Okay. And then looking at Minnesota Lake, we found the pond project, and, you know, to help the deterioration of the shoreline and everything else. She applied for the grant and got the DNR grant, and it just went from there.
Okay. Describe for us a little bit the area that this is located in. It's such a hidden place. People that go by on the main highway don't see this beautiful park. And describe the park area to us and where this project is located.
Well, it's on the west side of Minnesota Lake, and it's, yeah, you just get through there through back roads, but it's a beautiful, beautiful park. And it has a little lagoon that comes off of the lake of Minnesota Lake, and that is actually what's where we did this restoration project at.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about the size of your town and kind of the general makeup of your community.
We're about 650 people, small town, bedroom community, mostly to Mankato and some of Albert Lee and Wells, and it's just a small, nice community.
Great. It's been around for a long time, and this mill pond that is
Old Mill Pond,
yep,
yeah.
That is the kind of off of the lake. Was that man-made, created?
It was man-made, and I don't know why it was at one time, but it's not. And then it was restored back in, I think, in the 80s. They dug it out, and the DNR comes every year and stocks it with panfish. It's a kids' fishing pond.
Okay.
And a boardwalk has been put around it, and just so people can enjoy the beautiful park.
Great, great. Now you work on a number of projects that restore areas to native plants, and some of it's shoreline, some of it I'm sure is just open prairie. Give us a technical description of how you would classify this type of project.
Yeah, well, this the Minnesota Lake, they applied for a grant and received that grant a few years back. And what this was done for is to restore the shoreland to native plants, which you know, help a lot with erosion. They also have a goose problem, you know, with fecal matter, and droppies along there, which can be kind of inconvenience for people. So one of the things you can do is restore native vegetation along these ponds and streams, and that keeps the geese from coming up on the shore, because they're afraid, you know, there might be predators and whatnot in there. Sure. So it helps with that, and I do believe it did reduce, has already,
dramatically,
their presence on that pond. So, and these plants also help infiltrate runoff that comes around a pond. A lot of people will like the groomed look, and they'll have mowed Kentucky bluegrass down to the edge, and people are starting to notice and want to do what's right for wildlife and some of this pollution, whatnot. So that helps with cleaning up the lakes and ponds and whatnot.
Okay, so you got this grant, you applied for a grant, you got some funds to get started. Was this a multi-phase project, and kind of describe the first steps to us of what the community experienced?
It's a 3-year program, I believe, so we're going to finish it off next year. Okay. And we just got going on, we sprayed for the old weeds and stuff, and then we just got a bunch of groups together. 4-H came down there, and some Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, I believe, and local volunteers came down there, and we planted the Minnesota native plants, and it has fencing around it to keep the geese from eating the new plants. And okay. That worked out really well to keep them out of there. And now they've just flourished. They have taken off like crazy, and we're only a year into the project.
Was it hard to wait before those seeds germinated, or did you put in transplants?
Yep, we put in transplants, plugs.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So, and they took off right away, and we have, you know, a group got together, and we picked out we're into obviously flowers with all the flower gardens down at the park. So we picked out a lot of plants that had flowers, and then a lot of prairie grasses. I think we put down there.
All right. When you do a restoration project like this, Phil, are they always, do you always have to include native species, or are there certain plants that you like to see in that strip that do a better job than others of filtering that water, that, like you were talking about, before it gets into the pond? What do you guys recommend?
Sure. You know, working as a shoreline habitat specialist for the DNR, and part of my job is promoting the growth of native plants and restorations and naturalizing shorelands for both fish and wildlife, and game and non-game. So a lot of the plant lists we try and have them native to the county that they're in.
Oh, okay.
And you know, we have varying, you know, we got prairie, and we got deciduous forests and coniferous forests. We got all these different ecotypes or statewide, and we've put together a plant list for each county. And there are numerous nurseries out there that are growing and supplying these plants. So we come up with a plant list. You have different areas when you're doing a shoreline restoration. You know, we call it the aquatic area, which would be coontail and white water lily, some of the things you see growing out of the water. And a transitional area, which is it's wet area, where you'll have some wetter grasses, and there are forbs and flowers that go in there. And then the upland portion that comes up, and that consists mostly of some of the prairie species.
Okay, all right. Any favorites that you have on that list, or specific ones that were included in this project? I love that little blue flower. That was really adorable.
Yeah, that bottled gentian, that's why that one's in there. That's one of my favorites too. I do like the marsh milkweed. It's a purple flower. It's very fragrant. Attracts a lot of monarch butterflies, and there's also butterfly weed that grows in the upland portion of it. There's great many of them. I mean, it's just hard to. Meadow blazing star, you know, that's the ones in this project, and
the buttercup, the yellow buttercup that bloomed like crazy this spring.
Yep.
Was that called the yellow buttercup?
And there's marsh marigold in there also. Yep. And we have pictures of those.
Yep.
We just went, we're down there last week with my grandkids, and we counted 20 butterflies on one plant.
Oh, wow.
And they thought that was really neat.
Oh, I'll bet. That is great. That's great. So it's still relatively new. I mean, it's still developing and maturing. What kind of maintenance is required for a project like this? And do you need to have volunteers keeping, you know, regular watch and making sure that old weeds that you don't want don't come in? I mean, what kind of upkeep have you noticed so far?
That's it. There's to keeping the old weeds and the tree saplings from growing.
Oh, okay.
But and that's it, and then it will become pretty much maintenance free, with a little bit of weeding here and there of the stuff that kind of creeps in there.
Okay.
It's very important when you're planning a restoration to have a maintenance plan. A lot of these plants take up to 3 years to mature. They spend their first couple of seasons using their growth to put down roots. They have very deep roots that helps with infiltration and erosion control. And it's very important to keep up on that until they fully mature and can crowd out some of the annual weeds that are around. So, and fires, you know, 4 to 5 years down the road also to get rid of trees. That's part of why the native landscape, the prairies, were so tree-free, is you know, fires would run through them periodically to cleanse them of trees. So.
And you would still do that even on a shoreline project as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. About every 4 to 5 years can really help. It stimulates the growth and you know, returns some of the nutrients and the matter that's there to the ground.
All right. So do you anticipate this fence? I saw that you had this orange fence that keeps the geese out. Do you anticipate having to maintain a fence of some kind of into the future, or how long will that be there?
I think we plan on taking that down this fall. We figure they've been established enough, and then we'll start working on the north side of the shore.
Okay. All right. So this eventually will go all the way around the pond.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yep. We might come up with a different game plan on the north the north side, because that's where the gazebo is and the kids' play park and everything else. We might keep that lower, and but that's what it's nice about it. It's all different.
All right. I did see when I was there the other day, saw some kids that went down and went fishing in the pond. Is this shoreline area, because they were fairly tall and thick, and is that going to impact where you allow people to fish from so they're not tramping on this new growth? Or is there a plan for any docks, or do they fish off the bridge, or how do you make those two things compatible?
That's our plan, is to get some little fishing stations in there.
Okay.
And we're working with the DNR with another guy to put in a handicap fishing pier off of there, and then we'll just have some fishing stations for them to stand on. But if they're native plants, they're pretty durable, aren't they?
They're pretty durable,
Yeah.
and just having like little wood chip paths down to fishing platforms, so they have places for people to go, so they know where to go and not disturb, you know, what's been established.
Yeah. All right. And so the length of maturity, I mean, how long can these plantings maintain themselves? If they're, you know, you do a little bit of weeding, but can they go on in perpetuity?
Oh, they sure can. You know, you start out with the planting and you put in multiple species, like I think there's 20 or 30 species that we planted in there. But as they mature, you'll end up with maybe 6 to 10. And you know, you never know what's going to take at an area. I mean, that would be the,
And why is that?
as they progress, because each plant has specific needs. Well, you know, sun versus shade, different nutrients, soil types. So you try and put in a bunch of different species, and so you end up with something that will take and do well.
Okay. I noticed most of the plantings were right close to shore. Do you anticipate any of those submergent plants to kind of develop out into the water when you kind of have removed the geese trampling and traffic in there? Do you expect there to be some water plants that come up in that area as well, or that's not typical?
Well, they could, and one of the neat things about when water clarity returns to some of the ponds and lakes is a lot of the aquatic vegetation returns on its own. And there's usually a seed bank that we'll call it, you know, that's remnant down there, and it's kind of like a garden. I mean, you wouldn't plant a vegetable garden in the forest. You know, when you have dark water, you need sun penetration, and once they clear up, the sun can penetrate to the lake bottom and stimulate the growth of the plants that are dormant. Some of them are dormant.
Great. What's the community reaction been so far?
Good. You know, it's just nice not to see the weeds and to see the shoreline eroding from there. So everybody likes to see the park improved.
All right. Great. Other resources for communities that may be watching today and can see these pictures of the project and how great it is looking already, what kind of resources do they have at their disposal? I'm sure they can call Sharon and say, how did you do it? What do we do next? But the DNR surely has done many of these projects. Where can cities or different community groups turn to for information on how to do their own project?
Certainly. The best place to start is with the DNR website, which is at minnesotadnr.gov, and the homepage will come up, and you can go over to the left side and click on stewardship, and you can follow that through there. They'll have lakescaping, prairie restoration, and different stewardship projects you can do. You know, I encourage people to explore that. The Shoreline Habitat program, at which I work for, also has grants, and we do have a grant announcement that we just had out August 1st. So they can look on that. So local units of government and you know, cities and counties can look into, lake associations can look into that if they would be interested in doing some of these projects.
Great.
One of the tools that we have is this is an interactive CD. It's called Restore Your Shore, and that's available at the Minnesota bookstore. And once you're on the website there's a link to that. And it's $29.95, and what the neat thing about this is you can go through there and it helps you plan your own restoration. It also helps you put together a plant list and kind of describes the importance of what we're doing and why we do it. And we also have available also at that bookstore is, I use this a lot, this lakescaping for wildlife and water quality. Carol Henderson, who started the lakescaping program, you know, in the mid-90s, helped put this together as a resource for you know, individual property owners along lake shores and cities. And it kind of gives you a step-by-step, pictures of some of the plants in there, and just gives you a general idea on what you can do and why we should be doing it.
And some creative ideas of maybe what to try.
Yep, absolutely. And also on that website too, there are links to look at some shorelines that have been done all over the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
So I encourage people to check that out.
Great. Sharon, any ongoing maintenance of the water quality in the pond, or anything that you'll be doing kind of as the grant money kind of finishes, the project is finished after 3 years, but is there any long-term monitoring that you guys are planning to do with that particular pond and shoreline?
Well, just keeping it up. And actually on the south side of the pond, we planted prairie grass also, so that should, you know, be helped, so there's less mowing and stuff. And as a little bit more to that, as I'd contact your county soil and water, because that's at Faribault County Soil and Water got this grant for, because cities are mandated now to do much more for your storm water runoff.
Okay.
And they're probably very helpful too.
So lots of good reasons to do projects like this, and this one turned out to be a beautiful one.
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming in and telling us about it. If you folks at home have any interest in learning more about these shoreline restoration projects, check out the DNR website, like Phil said, and stay tuned for more Cities on the Move. Peter Kramer was a community leader early in Minnesota Lake's history. The beautiful home he built has been lovingly restored and is a great community asset. Let's take a look.
In The Story of Minnesota Lake, Mrs. Charles Brecht writes, "The men who founded Minnesota Lake, like those who followed, were neither religious fanatics nor selfish mercenaries. Chancey Barber was looking for Shangri-La, and Nick Kramer sought El Dorado. They found it here." The early days of Minnesota Lake began in 1856, with these two men standing on the shore of Minnesota Lake, dreaming of all the possibilities before them. Nick Kramer subsequently convinced his father John and the rest of his family, including brother Peter, to join him in Minnesota Lake. Mary Stevemer describes what life was like in those early days.
Well, there would have been horse and buggy, I'm sure. The streets would not have been paved, they would have been dirt. There would have been hitching posts along the road, and I'm sure the sidewalks would have been boards.
Though not the first to arrive, Peter Kramer was instrumental in the development of the town.
They were definitely community leaders. Peter was the one that was kind of an entrepreneur, and he did many things. He built a flour mill, he had a stockyard, he had a hardware store, and he started a bank. So he did many things.
In this pioneer era, Peter Kramer built a grand Queen Anne home for himself and his wife.
The Kramer House was built in 1902, and it cost $10,000 at the time when they built it. It's a Queen Anne red brick building, 2 stories, with an attic and a basement, and it's a beautiful house with lovely hardwood floors throughout, and it has a beautiful entryway and a stairway with intricate woodworking, and some of the features of the house are the double pocket doors and the etched hinges. Well, there are some stained glass windows. There's a turret which is round, it's circular, and there's this curved window.
After the death of Peter, his wife Millie continued to live in the home until her death in 1950. The home then passed to relatives until the Farmers National Bank purchased the home. After a period of other uses, the house stood empty.
The bank bought the house, and then it was changed into 2 apartments, one upstairs, one downstairs. And then in 1980, the house was put on the historical register. And then it seemed like such a shame. It was a beautiful house, and people thought we should save it. And I think Ethel Townsend and Mrs. Moore were instrumental in putting it on the register and in making and remodeling the house, or I shouldn't say remodeling, restoring the house.
Today, the beautifully restored home serves the community in several capacities.
The home is used as a library. It is also used as a family history place. We have files upstairs, and we do clippings and try to help people find information about their ancestors.
Many of the rooms are used to display artifacts from Minnesota Lake's history, including furniture and paintings of the era.
Well, we just received this table and 4 chairs from Frank Corey, who lived in this town, and he's now in a nursing home. And supposedly this table and chairs were original to this house. There was a man called Ed Coate who lived in this town, and they said when he needed money, he would paint a picture and sell it. And he was quite a good artist. A lot of them were of the old mill, and there were a lot of birds, and obviously he was a hunter or fisherman. And this is a wedding dress that was worn by Helena Volz.
The home also features a room dedicated to area veterans.
We asked people to send in the pictures of their servicemen, and we got a pretty good response.
The Kramer House is a beautiful example of the ingenuity and hard work the people of Minnesota Lake have displayed in the building of their town to this very day.
And now for the calendar of events. Check out Fringe Friday in Winona on September 24th. Fringe Fridays are held the last Friday of each month. The Frozen River Fringe Friday is an eclectic mix of arts and live entertainment offered in conjunction with local business people, artists, and musicians to promote the Frozen River Film Festival, as well as the arts and locally owned businesses in the greater community. For more information, check out visitwinona.org. On Saturday, September 25th, the Mankato Symphony Orchestra presents Handel with Care, Handel Grows Up. This event is great for a kid's first concert experience. Follow George Frederick Handel as he travels the world, has madcap adventures, and learns the languages and the music of his foreign ports of call. It's informal and interactive. Young children are welcome to wander about the room. They have treats, free t-shirts, and prizes at each performance. For more information, call Heidi Larson at 507-625-8880. On October 2nd, visit the Harvest Fest Wine, Art, and All That Jazz celebration in downtown Clear Lake. Enjoy live jazz music, wine tasting seminars, demonstrations, and food, as well as browsing through the downtown shops, art galleries, and farmers market. For more information, visit clearlakeiowa.com. If you have an event to share with our viewers, log on to ksmq.org and post it today. Next week on Cities on the Move, we check out what's happening in another great city in our region. Please join us Tuesday, September 21st at 6:30 p.m. on KSMQ for another edition of Cities on the Move. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Good night.